Hey everybody, welcome back to my shop. And today we're going to turn this funky natural edge bowl out of a piece of birch. But please remember, this is not an instructional video and is meant for entertainment purposes only. Your safety is your responsibility. So let's get started. Okay, so we're just starting out with this chunk of birch. I'm not sure what exact kind of birch it is. I think it's like a red Chinese birch or a water birch. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure that out. But the bark's already decided that it's not going to want to stay on. So I'm going to remove the rest of this bark. Oh, isn't it nice when it comes off that easy? Then I'll probably find the center and I'll drill with a spade bit a 1-inch hole just to accept the spur drive a little bit better. So now I'm just going to mount it up between centers. So we already have this center point on the top of the bowl. And so I'm just going to feed that in there and bring up the tailstock. And now I'm just going to spend a little bit of time trying to get the kind of balance of the rim I want. I want these two higher points to be somewhat similar. So maybe I'll move that up just a bit this way. And this one, I'm not too concerned if one of these is quite a bit lower than the other, because it's going to be kind of a wavy rim anyway. So I think we're going to just stick with that. So I'm just going to clamp down the tailstock, lock the headstock, and then twist. I'm going to move the camera so you can see a little better. So as you see, I'm just locking the headstock and twisting the wood to get those teeth to chew in a little bit deeper, and then a little more tailstock pressure, a little more twisting until she's good and solid. There, that's pretty good. Next thing we're going to do is true up the outside of the bowl and flatten off the bottom. I'll have to watch out here because we've got some loose chunks of wood from some rot and decay, so I got to make sure I stay out of the line of fire. We'll start out with the swept back grind, 5/8. It'll give us some nice easy roughing. We can get the speed up to about 1,000 RPM, but please excuse any bit of camera shaking. Hopefully we get her trued up quick enough that that goes away in no time. So let's get her going. Like I said, 1,000 RPM. Gonna push in from the top now. Okay, still got a couple flat spots, and I've got a little bit of a crack radiating from the pith here. That might be an issue. I might not be able to get rid of it, but we'll have to see as we go. I'm going to swing the tool rest around here again, see if we can pick up the speed just a little bit. And I guess about 1,100 is about all I can get out of her so far. A nice beautiful grain in these shavings. Okay, so it's a little bit of a flat spot up here on the rim. So I'm going to push in again because I'm getting a lot of fibers lifting out by pushing this way because there's no support behind that top of the rim. So as it's coming over, it's kind of pulling these fibers up. So I'm going to do a couple push cuts inwards again and see if we can't get those fibers to settle down, and then we'll start looking for a shape. Okay, so starting to get some nice swirly grain figure coming out here, so that's kind of exciting. I don't know if we're going to keep this little branch section up here because it's actually encased in bark, so there's nothing holding it in. That'll probably come flying out of this later, so we'll have to keep that in mind. I think what we should do next is get rid of this rot down here and form a tenon so we know exactly how much wood we'll have left to make the shape of the bowl. So let's move on to that next. Ooh. So now we see a bit of a danger possibility here. This crack seems to extend on an angle up to about here. So the live center seems to be in some solid wood, but we don't know for sure. So we got to be really careful at this point. It's kind of an unknown. So let's keep shaping it out, get rid of this. We'll cut this back a little bit more because we can't clamp onto anything like that that has a crack and use it as a tendon. So we have to, or tenon. So let's keep cutting away. Okay, I've cut a little bit further in here just to see how far that crack goes in, and unfortunately it looks like it still might run right underneath it. So yeah, I think I'm just going to leave a lot of mass down there. I'm going to avoid taking really aggressive cuts, and we'll shape the tenon and well, hope for the best and stay out of the line of fire, like I say. Okay, so we've now cut past the lowest point of the crack, looks like to be about there. So anything below this area is going to be where the tenon's going to have to go. And we're not going to get a really big tenon on it because I want to create a bit of a smaller foot on this bowl so it doesn't just feel like a big chunky bowl. But I also don't want to make it so swooped that it's going to hide any of this grain. Yeah. Okay, we got some decisions to think over, I guess. Just keep going. We're going to make that tenon. Okay, so we do have a tenon down here. Quite a small tenon, but that's because my next set of jaws is 4 inches, and that gives us very little bit of room for design changes. So we're going to be holding on by a very small area this time. So next what we're going to do is figure out what size of foot we're going to put down here and what kind of shape. Now, seeing that the grain is quite wavy like this and it's a natural edge bowl, I'm thinking a smaller foot with a nice even curve where it'll start with a fairly good curve and then maybe taper off to less curve. I'm going to take a quick 5-minute break and then think this design over. So it turns out that the rim is about 8.5 inches wide, and I think I want to make the foot about 1/3 that. So I've got these calipers set to a heavy 2 3/4. Lathe slowed down, so I'm just going to mark out the foot. Yeah, about there. We'll start with that. That foot might actually be a little bit small. Maybe we should aim for more like 2/5 of the overall height. But what we're going to do is sneak up on the shape then in that case. I think I'm actually liking the proportions so far. I might even take the foot down just a little bit more and just kind of get that curve to continue through just a little bit more continuous. Okay, got a fresh sharpening on the gouge. Let's give a nice cleaning pass, get rid of that torn grain. I'm going to smooth this transition down here from the foot to the actual bowl. Hope I can line these up on this one. Yeah. Gonna take a little bit more refining, I tell you that. A lot of little rough marks and tool marks. Ooh, this is a little tough. There's so much vibrations in this turn that I can't get my tool to stay steady. So I'm going to have to take a few more cleaning passes and see if I can get those tool marks taken out. Got the gouge all sharpened up. So next I'm going to take one last final pass and try to get a good clean cut on it so we eliminate all that torn grain, and then we can shear scrape to prep for sanding. Nice and slow. Oh, darn. You know what? I think I'm actually going to stick with that shape. I'd taken one heavy cut that I wasn't too happy with, and then I thought, well, I'll just continue the curve and I'll wing it and see what happens. And sometimes you just gotta, you know, throw caution to the wind. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. This time, it's not too bad. And I still got some torn grain in some areas here, so I'm going to do a ton of shear scraping on this bowl because it's going to warp when it dries and it's going to be a real pain to sand. So the cleaner I get it before we sand, the better. So, on to shear scraping. I've just been doing some shear scraping, so I figured I'd explain what I'm doing. I've got the tool rest kind of angled 45 degrees away from the surface, and this way you kind of get a little bit more support because the tool's butting up against the tool rest. If the tool rest was parallel to the surface, it would, as you're shear scraping, that angle of the cutter, that 45 or more that you're holding, is actually going to draw the tool away from you. So you want to kind of have it angled off of the piece, away from the piece, so that your tool can actually take the forces down into the tool rest instead of sliding down them. So I'll just continue doing that. Now, Phil from Madrona Woodworks was kind of joking around in his last video when he says that I start out with pretty high grits of sandpaper. And on the outsides of the bowl, that's somewhat true. I usually try to start with about 220 if it's possible. But this is only because I can do so much shear scraping with the gouge to prep the surface. But on the inside of the bowl, on the other hand, I can't do that shear scraping, so I usually start out with about 150 there. Now you'll notice on the screen, this is the bowl before shear scraping. And you'll see there's lots of tool marks. You know, there's some torn grain, lots of burnishing, there's lots to fix up. But now you'll see on the screen, here's the bowl after shear scraping. It was about 5 to 10 minutes worth, probably closer to 10 minutes, and it eliminated all the tool marks, left just one little patch of some torn grain, and all the burnishing's gone as well. This will greatly reduce the amount of time I have to sand. Now with all the shear scraping out of the way, we're ready to flip it around and grab it in the chuck. But I gotta reduce this mass that's below the tenon so that it doesn't bottom out in the chuck when we go to reverse it. So I gotta whittle this away really carefully because there is that crack in there and I don't want to relieve too much at once. I might even slow the speed down once we release some of the mass. I'm actually just gonna check it real quick. Yeah, we've got cracks all the way through now. Ay, ay, ay. So I'm going to slow this right down. 600 RPM. Whoa. Okay, yeah, you see that one void's already letting go? Usually what I would do is I would try to whittle it down and leave this in place, but I'm actually going to just knock it off. So I'll take off that last little bit of a shoulder down here, and then I'm going to just knock it off with a chisel because it's already starting to wobble. There's nothing holding it. Okay, tenon's not too big. Chisel time. Actually, as I'm taking the tailstock pressure off, take a look at this. There was nothing holding it. So be very careful when you see cracks and voids. Take caution. We're ready to start hollowing. I'm going to switch over to my 40/40 grind bull gouge, and I'm going to work on getting really even wall thickness, and I'm going to leave as much mass in the center as I can as I go to help dampen vibration. Now, because this rim and the top of this bowl is so uneven, I'm still getting quite a bit of vibration, so we can't really get above 1100 RPM. So let's get working away on this. Okay, I'm starting to get a pretty even wall thickness all the way down. I'm going to start relieving some of this mass and reaching further in, and this tool doesn't have a lot of mass to it, so I'm going to have to probably switch back over to the swept back grind to keep reaching in deeper. I'm cutting through that branch right now, and it's making for some real rough cutting. Okay, anytime now we're going to see this branch come flying out of here. I'm not going to try to save it because it's surrounded by bark, and to try to glue it in there, it just won't be a very stable hold. I don't want it to pop out in the future, so I'm just going to let it come out on its own. Looking pretty decent so far. Yep, there she goes. Yeah, it looks kind of cool, though. I don't mind it. I don't know what I'm going to do with this other one yet, though. So I said earlier I'd want to switch over to my swept back grind, but it doesn't quite have the length to make it, even if I angle in the tool rest. So I think I'll have to switch over to my bottom feeder bowl gouge a little bit early, because it's got the mass I need. The only problem is it's got a very steep angle, so I can't take very big cuts. So it's going to be a lot of little small cuts, and I'll have to work away at it for a little bit. So I'll switch the camera into high speed to save a bit of time. Sometimes I almost shy away from turning deep bowls because of the difficulty I know that I'll face during hollowing. Don't let these type of tendencies put you into a creative rut. It will limit the amount of design options you have, and sometimes a piece of wood will demand a deep shape in order to properly capture the figure or other features in the wood. If you see, as I get close to the bottom here, I'm starting to meet up with all that kind of swirled up grain, and there's some knots and some voids in there, so it's becoming quite a rough cut. I'm going to try to get one last good cleaning pass through there, but I want to show you how kind of rough it's been. We'll take it real nice and slow. That loud banging at the end is me actually even running into the rim because it's getting that deep of a bowl that I can't quite make that turn. So I'm just going to clean up that center part there a little bit, and we'll consider this done. Okay, so that's all the cutting I'm going to do. This is already reaching kind of the limitations of my tooling. And I've got the profile refined pretty much to where I want it, but I still got some tool marks and a bit of tear out, so I will be starting with 150 grit sandpaper to power sand the insides. Log sat outside for probably a good couple of years, so the wood's actually already part way to being dry. It doesn't have that much moisture left in it, so I'm going to let it sit in some shavings in the shop for a couple days before sanding, and then after that it'll probably be dry enough to start finishing. So when we come back, it'll have already been sanded. I'll save you that kind of fun stuff. So I was looking the bowl over before I started sanding, and I noticed some kind of punky rotten section up in here, so I poked it all out and brushed it out real clean, and I'm going to do a real quick fix on it using some 5-minute epoxy and some crushed up charcoal, so that should come out nice and black. So we'll do that before we sand. I usually like to use black colored epoxy for repairs, but due to the odd shape of the void in this bowl, I think using sawdust from the bowl itself might have been a more natural looking option. But like they say, hindsight is 20/20. I've decided to go with polyurethane for the finish on this piece, so I've just got some thinned down by about 20% mineral spirits, so 80% poly and 20% mineral spirits. And that allows me to wipe it on without it getting tacky in the process. So I'm just going to wipe it on and wipe off all the excess. And I'll do that with about 4 or 5 coats, scuffing between each coat with some 4/0 steel wool. So I'm just making sure I get the wood to soak up as much as I can. And once it won't take any more, I'll wipe off the excess. So here's the inside. And I guess the wood is thin enough and porous enough that the finish is already coming through on the other side. Let's see that grain come out. Yeah, it's one of those woods that finish really pops the grain. And I love that. So when we come back, I'll have gotten another 4 coats on or so, scuffing between each coat, like I said, with 4/0 steel wool, and it should come out nice and shiny. Finishing's all complete. It ended up taking 6 coats of polyurethane, as this wood was pretty thirsty. And after the first 2 coats, I don't actually wipe off all the excess. I wipe on enough to get good coverage, but not so much that it'll run or sag. It's got some nice chatoyance in this piece. It's French for cat's eyes, I think. Let's flip it around and take off the tenon. Just going to use a jam chuck that's padded with some cheap gym flooring and a paper towel to protect the finished surface when reversing the bowl. I'm still not totally sure what kind of birch this tree was, so I haven't signed or finished the bottom yet. So I'm asking if any of my friends out there in YouTube, or even some of my friends locally, Cal and Sheldon and Corey, I'm talking about you guys. If anybody knows what kind of birch this was, would you let me know? It had that kind of reddish bark. The trunk was a good 18 inches at the bottom, and the tree was about 35 feet tall by about 30 feet wide, so it's a pretty big birch. And if I don't get the bottom finished right away, it's going to push it into the next year, so it looks like this bowl might be my first project of 2019, which I'm pretty happy with. Thanks for tuning into this week's video. If you liked the video, please click the like button and share it around. If you have any questions or suggestions for me, please fire those off in the comment section down below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. I'll have a new video out pretty much every Friday. So thank you very much. Have yourself a great day, and God bless.